Give it just a minute, folks. You can't miss this. Got a special surprise for y'all this morning. However, those of you watching the live stream won't be able to hear it. It's through my mixer and audio podcast and all that. Only if it would ever play. I guess now that we're live streaming, my internet's slow as HE double hockey sticks. Well, anyway, how we doing this fine morning? Colored all night. And I guess they got tired and went to bed. I did hear them hollering a little bit this morning before. If that tells you anything about my sleeping. Trying to do a little live streaming on Facebook, though my technology doesn't want to cooperate, so we'll just have to work with what we've got, I guess. I had a little video I wanted to start off with this morning. Actually, I've got about 100 news articles to go over. Anything about what's been going on in the world, of about 1 million liberal journalists out there who are all the time writing attack pieces on us conservatives, on our president, on anybody who disagrees with anything that they say, believe in, represent. And I'll tell you folks, if you ever wondered what a tyrannical government takeover would look like, if you ever wondered what a repeal of the First and Second Amendment would look like, you're looking at it. This is it. You are looking at it. And I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the Democrats. It's deeper than the Democrats, folks. It's the NWO. Believe that. There's a reason why they want your guns, folks. There's a really good reason why. The reason is they want you to be helpless when they send in the military to round you up, when they send in the cops, whatever, their SWAT teams to round us all up like they did the Jews. They don't want you to have no guns. Look at how Hitler done. He started by, you know, first saying that the Jews couldn't buy stuff, you know.
This is Barack Obama, and I'm the President of the United States of America.
You sure are. At least you used to be. But that's the same thing that the Nazis did when they tried to kill the entire Jewish population of Germany. And you look at what the liberals want to happen to the NRA. They want people to not be able to use their credit cards when they donate money to the NRA, when they pay their memberships, whatever. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And at the same time, they want you to give up your guns. They want to say that the NRA doesn't have a right to exist. Nobody has a right to own a gun. You heard my little pig dog. He just came in here and sat down beside the door. I guess got to missing me. He's really getting old, folks. I actually had a dream yesterday morning that he died. And, yeah, I woke up pretty sad, to say the least, but, yeah,
This is Barack Obama, and you're listening to the
Alexander Morgan, Mr. Barack Hussein says. But yeah, this is what the takeover of a tyrannical government looks like. This is what a repeal of the First and Second Amendment looks like. And if they get their way, you're going to be looking at losing all of your rights, okay? All of them. Not just the First and Second Amendment. All of them. And that's what we're trying to prevent here, folks. This is why that I'll do this show, because I don't want to see us face any kind of hardship. Okay, I'm trying to prevent this in the world for this job or anything like that. Come back on that, Barack. But yeah, I'm trying to prevent this by all means necessary. And what else? Alexander Morgan, he says. That's pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. I gotta play with my new toy. But that's the way it is. And you had Obama the other day giving a secret speech, so-called, to where he didn't want anybody to film it. He didn't want anybody to record it. He didn't want anybody to tell anybody what he said. You know, that's the arrogance, and these people really show you who they are each and every day. Believe that.
President Obama spoke at MIT on Friday and immediately began rewriting history. He made the claim that his administration was scandal-free thanks to the magical power of diversity. Running guns to Mexican cartels didn't happen. Weaponizing the IRS and the FBI against political opponents, fake news. Well, Obama has been patting himself on his back. The party he shattered is searching for a champion in the next election. Fox's Juan Williams just argued in an opinion piece that President Trump's three strongest challengers would all be African-American women: Oprah, Michelle Obama, and Senator Kamala Harris of California. Is that true? Fox senior political analyst Britt Hume joins us tonight. Britt, so the first question, thanks for coming on, is that true? Do you think diversity kept Barack Obama's 2 terms entirely scandal-free?
Well, I don't think it was entirely scandal-free. You just mentioned a couple of examples, and then there's another one, a kind of a howler, and that is his Secretary of State so recklessly mishandled classified information that she was very nearly indicted, and many legal experts think she should have been. I would rate that as a pretty big scandal. I don't think diversity had anything to do with it one way or another, but it certainly argues against the idea that it was scandal-free. It wasn't.
It's funny, though. I mean, the former president, and to really do his credit, I mean, he hasn't been, I mean, this was apparently an off-the-record comment that got reported. He hasn't been in the news, really, and I think that's exactly what a former president should be, not around. However, it seems a little early to start rewriting the history of an administration that just ended, doesn't it?
Well, look, all presidents try to see their administrations in the most favorable possible light, and he's looking back on him, because Obama, whether you liked him or not, did behave himself with a certain dignity and grace that some have found lacking in Donald Trump. Clearly, Obama has found that lacking in Donald Trump, and I think he'd like to contrast that with Mr. Trump, but to say that his administration is scandal-free is nonsense.
Yeah, it is. So there was a piece this week by our colleague and friend, Juan Williams. I'm not singling him out. A lot of people have basically written this, but said that the 3 main challengers to President Trump who made, in effect, announcements saying he's running again 3 years from now would be Oprah, Michelle Obama, and Kamala Harris of California, all 3 black women. What struck me about this was the way it was framed and the way so many of these conversations are framed. They primarily turn on questions of race and gender. Is that the future, do you think, of American politics, identity politics?
Well, it certainly is the future of the Democratic Party. Indeed, it's the present of the Democratic Party that it looks at things that way. And being a woman and being a minority would be an important credential for nomination in the Democratic Party. It doesn't mean you won't. That doesn't mean you're going to get the nomination, but it gives you a leg up. It gave Hillary Clinton a leg up and enabled her to fight off the rather significant challenge from a geriatric the person of Bernie Sanders. One might have thought that would have been easy, but such is the Democratic Party today, it wasn't easy at all. And if you're looking ahead to 2020, whoever it is likely to need to have quite as far to the left of where it used to be. I think all 3 of the women described, I'm not really sure where Oprah is on all the issues. I really haven't looked into it very carefully because I doubt she's going to run. Kamala Harris has certainly shown herself to be...
But yeah, that's what the Democrats are going to throw at you this 2020 for their presidential candidate. And if I had to pick between those 3 and I was a Democrat, I don't know. It would be definitely between Michelle Obama, because she's a tranny, and Kamala Harris, because I know her politics goes far, far to the left. I don't know about Oprah and where her politics lie, but I know whose team that she's playing for. I know who she's carrying the ball for. I do know that. But yeah. y'all can hear that snoring, that's my little pig dog again. He's laying right here at the door asleep, snoring his little heart out. But yeah, and I'll tell you, with this new sound system I've got going on, you can literally hear a gnat fart. That's no joke. You just heard that dog go by, didn't you? Well, keep in mind it's about 200 foot up the hill there. Really got to get a new computer, or like I need something that will make my internet faster, because when I do these live streams it really slows it down. I can't play videos, I can't do nothing. I think I'm going to start actually pre-recording these and uploading them or something. I don't know what else to do. But let's move on to this next article here. We had an explosion in England about 2 days ago. Thought this was kind of important, so I figured I would go ahead and share it. But yeah, by Associated Press, it says, this article is from time.com, February 26, 2005. 5 people have died of injuries from an explosion that caused the collapse of a building in the central England city of Leicester, police said on Monday. A search and rescue operation continued for other possible victims of the Sunday night explosion that injured five more people, officials said. Leicestershire Police Superintendent Shane O'Neill said the building where the explosion happened consisted of a shop and a two-story apartment above it. The building collapsed after the explosion and was engulfed in flames. Police evacuated neighbors as a precaution. The cause has not yet been established. Police say they didn't think terrorism was involved. Matt Kane from Leicestershire Fire Department and Rescue Service said there were still, quote, pockets of fire, end quote, in the basement of the building on Monday. Going on to say, quote, we have a significant number of specialist search and rescue teams who are supported by 2 search dogs. It may be some days yet before we will be able to establish the probable cause of the explosion, end quote. Here you see the scene. Leicester is 110 miles or 100 London. But folks, they wouldn't tell you if that was a terrorist attack, if it was terror related. They're not going to tell you because they don't want people to be against their precious Muslims. They can't handle people being against their precious Muslims. That's just the way that it is. Let's get into the Florida shooting and the latest on that. I know there's a video to this article. This is written and put out by those fine people over there at CNN. most loving and understanding people in the media. Here's the video right here at the top of the screen. I guess I'll have to wait on it to load up a little bit. But Jake Tapper's interview with Sheriff Scott Israel, Sheriff of Broward County, Florida. Coward from Broward. You heard it here, folks. Yeah, this shooting has really got the people out there who are smart enough to question anything and everything that need questioning.
Sheriff, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. I want you to take a listen to Stoneman Douglas High School senior Brandon Huff talking about your deputy, the school resource officer.
The reason they're all going crazy is because of all the similarities. Okay. When I say similarities, I'm talking about similarities in other events, other tragedies that have taken place, like 9/11, Sandy Hook, the one in Colorado, what was the name of it? Columbine. You had, well, the first thing that was very, very suspicious to me was there were some students talking about a special visit made to the school by the Secret Service a couple of weeks before the event that took place on Valentine's Day. This Wednesday, February 14th, would have been would have been 2 weeks ago today. A couple of weeks before that, a teacher told a student that the Secret Service had made a visit and made sure that everything was up to speed to do with like security and that sort of thing. Which is pretty suspicious in any incident, if you ask me, because the only job you ever hear about the Secret Service doing is protecting the president and, you know, former presidents or former senators, former congressmen, that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe Newt Gingrich or somebody like that. I don't know. But you don't never hear about the Secret Service doing anything. But they took time out of their busy schedule to go to a high school in random USA to make sure that, you know, all their security measures were up to par, up to speed, whatever. You know, they sure never come to my high school and doubt anything like that. And pretty sure I was going to school when Columbine happened. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Okay. Then you had all the students talking about the fire drill that took place early that morning. I don't know, sometime between 9 and 10 a.m. Then you had, right before the school the shooting started, the supposed shooter or shooters, culprit or culprits, suspect, whatever you want to call them, somebody pulled the damn fire alarm and caused, you know, all the students and faculty to, or most of them, to start to head to the hallway or start to evacuate. I'm going to read you a story here in a minute that has a teacher giving her eyewitness account, and she says that she saw someone who was shooting, who was dressed completely in tactical gear. She thought he was a police officer. So here's the thing that gets me. If she saw that, and then this girl, this whatever her name was, the one that said that she exited the school with the suspect, said he was dressed in plain street clothes, said he was, you know, carrying a gym bag, and she's like, well, we had a school shooting, we thought if we ever had anything like this, you know, you would be the shooter. And he just looked at her like, you know, like he was dumbfounded, just, you know, Adam Lanzica, you know. And whatever, they just shrugged it off and kept heading for the exits. So my question is, what did he do with all of his body armor, his helmet, his gun or guns? It's not making any sense at all. And instead of people who are supposed to be journalists, instead of them asking questions like this, you have them just sticking to the story, sticking to the plot, same old stuff, just a different day, a different shooting.
Scott Peterson.
The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there, and he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the building, and shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over. He was just talking on the radio, and he never did anything for 4 minutes. He's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and all, you know, he has all that while school security guards, you know, coaches pretty much.
School resource officer, quote, did nothing, end quote, according to this student.
Thanks so much for joining.
But we're going to let this video load some more, as it is badly bogging down. I'm going to go ahead and shut this video here off. Maybe we can get a little better internet speed. I've got a video stream going now, and I've got a podcast stream going. That's plenty. I've been trying to post these streams to my Facebook group. You can search Red Pill at the top of this Facebook page, and the picture is from the movie The Matrix. It's the famous scene where Morpheus is sitting there with the red pill in one hand and the blue pill in the other one. But yeah, y'all can join my group. If you want to follow me on Facebook, go to facebook.com/Big Al Morgan. I really recommend y'all
joining us. I appreciate it. I want you to take a listen to Stoneman Douglas High School senior Brandon Huff talking about your deputy, the school resource officer, Scott Peterson.
The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there, and he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the building, and shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over. He was just talking on the radio, and he never did anything for 4 minutes. He's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and he has all that while school security guards, coaches pretty much, were running in, shielding kids.
Sheriff, how do you respond to this student?
All what the student said, our video and audio.
I really want to play this. Try to.
And all the witness statements we have taken corroborates that. That's what I saw. Just demoralized with the performance of former Deputy Peterson, and that's why I called him in and suspended him without pay as we were going to move towards termination, and he resigned.
Did he tell you why he didn't go in?
He did not.
I'm also told by sources in Coral Springs.
Why didn't this piece of crap go in? That's what I want to know. I ain't worried about some, well, I am in a way, but here you have their fearless leader, the man who, said, hey, I'm going to run for sheriff, and obviously this guy right here is not the man for the job. This man, I don't know of any of these officers that were willing to put their lives on the line to save even one life, let alone, the whole schools. 17 kids lost their lives. What time these toy cops were hiding behind their police cars and on their radios and waiting for backup. What? Surely they had shotguns, assault rifles in their trunks. Surely with their tax dollars, they can afford, extra assault rifles for their men. And you would think, like, I know that a SWAT team probably wouldn't be the first thing you would think of when it comes to first responders at something like this, but when it comes to just ordinary cops now, I know that all of them pack a pistol on their side, but you would think they would have had more high-powered firearms in the trunk of their car. If nothing else, got it before they left the station. I mean, they knew what they were going to, you know, pretty much. Barring that it wasn't, you know, a mistake or something like that. They knew.
The Coral Springs police who arrived at the scene saw that 3 other Broward deputies were standing behind cars, not having gone into the building. What can you tell me about that?
Well, let me be perfectly clear. Our investigation to this point shows that during this horrific attack, while this killer was inside the school, there was only one law enforcement person, period, and that was former Deputy Scott Peterson. Coral Springs arrived. A group of Coral Springs officers went in. Within, I think, about 4 minutes, we're projecting, after the killer left.
4 minutes, folks. I can kind of see why this Scott Peterson didn't enter. I mean, he was probably the only cop there. He probably had a pistol, maybe, you know, 12 to 15 shells in a clip. You know, I don't know what kind of gun he had. He may have had a Daisy BB gun for all I know. You know, and then again, he didn't know how many suspects that was in that building. I don't know, you know. And this guy suspended him without pay. Really? It's a funny, funny world that we live in.
Good evening. How are you? Yes.
This is my favorite, okay?
We were in goddamn Hawaii.
That you have to listen to the podcast if y'all wanna.
This week.
Yeah, you have to listen to it this week.
Speak for your own self.
You know, you have to listen to the podcast if you want if you want to hear your ex-president.
President of the Confederacy. Barack Obama.
Yeah, if you want to hear him, you have to be listening to the podcast, okay? That's all I gotta say. But
The campus, I understand that they're going to give statements to us.
let's back this up here just a little bit. If this wasn't so important, folks, I wouldn't be sitting here wasting time on it.
Sheriff, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. I want you to take a listen to Stoneman Douglas High School senior Brandon Huff talking about your deputy, the school resource officer.
Going to have to give us time to load back up again, folks. I don't know, we'll give it a few more minutes. But yeah, this just disgusts me, folks. You know, I'm not, personally, I'm not no cop. And there's a reason for this. See, when it comes to just at any given time, any given minute, I really don't want to put my life on the line for a stranger or just anybody. Not that I wouldn't, it's just that I don't want to. I mean, I put it like this, life is a very, very precious thing. And yes, I would do stuff to keep people from getting hurt, to keep people from getting killed. But I don't want to do it for a living, okay? I'll say that much. These guys did want to do it for a living. These guys went through police training, and but yet when it came to them doing their duty when they were supposed to do their duty, they didn't. Yet the guy that was there first, you know, because he was already there, he didn't, you know, go in like maybe when he was supposed to either. I guess he was waiting on backup, but you know, what was these guys' excuse? And then they suspended this Scott Peterson without pay and was going to fire him, but he went ahead and resigned. Man, that's bull. Okay, if I don't know the whole situation, but I know what the coward from Broward right here. See this guy right here? I know what he sat there and told Jake Tapper. And as big a liberal as Jakey baby is, even he's dumbfounded. Look at the look on his face.
Sheriff, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. I want you to take a listen to Stoneman Douglas High School senior Brandon Huff talking about Scott Peterson.
The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there. And he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the...
Just standing there, pointing it at the wall, you know, talking on his little radio.
building. And you could... shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over. He was just talking on the radio, and he never did anything for
4 minutes, folks. He didn't do nothing. President Trump and Florida's Republican governor have promised action, including some proposals to change existing gun laws. And a brand new CNN poll shows support for stricter gun purchasing laws at its highest level of the last 25 years, with 70% now saying that they back new, more restrictive gun legislation. Nearly 2/3 think government and society can take action that will effectively prevent future mass shootings. That's much higher than CNN polls after the tragedies in Las Vegas, Orlando, and Charleston, and Sandy Hook, suggesting perhaps the shooting in Parkland, Florida has shifted public opinion in a way other incidents have not. So what's the difference, folks? What's the damn difference in this shooting where 17 victims lost their lives? Okay, what's the damn difference? Can anybody tell me? Supposedly, I don't know, 50 or so died in Las Vegas, and he wounded a whole lot. He wounded about 75, I think. Now all of a sudden everybody's opinion has changed. No, I don't think that bit, folks. If you ask me, the more that they push this nonsense, this need, like we need more gun control, the more they push that, the worse they look. Okay. Now I know that there are restrictions on their rights, okay? I mean, there's restrictions on the First Amendment. You can't yell fire in a theater. You can't slander anyone. You can't verbally attack anyone or anything like that. Second Amendment. I know that you probably don't need no anti-aircraft artillery or any anti-tank guns or anything like that, but as long as you don't have a criminal record, as long as you're not a felony offender, as long as you never committed a violent crime, I think you should be able to purchase about any kind of gun that you want to. Maybe not go out and buy 2 million rounds like the U.S. government or anything like that, but I believe that you should be able to protect yourself. And just because the government hasn't gotten it right until now, just because they didn't get it right in this particular event, that doesn't mean we need bigger government. That doesn't mean we need more gun legislation, more gun control. See, that's the way the liberals and the people in Washington, that's the way the New World Order operates. They mess up, so we need bigger government, and we need more restrictions on the public's rights, and here you go, Mr. Tapper, take my gun. You can have it. I don't need it. No.
1 minute. He's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and he has all that while school security guards, coaches pretty much, were running in, shielding kids.
Sheriff, how do you respond to this student?
What the students said, our video and audio and all the witness statements we have taken corroborates that. That's what I saw, and when I saw that, I was disgusted. I was just demoralized with the performance of former Deputy Peterson, and that's why I called him in and suspended him without pay as we were going to move towards termination, and he resigned.
Did he tell you why he didn't go in?
He did not.
I'm also told by sources in Coral Springs.
I'd asked him why he didn't go in.
That Coral Springs police who arrived at the scene saw that 3 other Broward deputies were standing behind cars, not having gone into the building. What?
That's right, Jakey boy. Okay, let's get back to this article. But there are also new questions about the numerous missed red flags about the shooter and the immediate response. Coral Springs, sources tell me, in addition to the school resource officer, when Coral Springs arrived on the scene, they were surprised to find 3 other Broward County Sheriff's deputies who had not yet entered the school. The Broward County denies those reports, saying only 1 deputy was there during the time of the shooting while the shooter was there. But what about in this immediate aftermath when it's still an active shooter situation and victims were in desperate need of help? I want you to take a listen to Stoneman Douglas Sr., Brandon Huff, talking about your deputy, the school resource officer, Scott Peterson. Y'all heard what he said. The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there, and he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the building. And you could, shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over, and he was just standing there on the radio. And he never did anything for 4 minutes. And he's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest and all. He has all that while school security guards, you know, coaches pretty much, were running in, shielding kids. Tapper: Sheriff, how do you respond to this student? Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel: Oh, what the student said, our video and audio and all the witness statements we have taken corroborates that. That's what I saw. And when I saw that, I was disgusted. I was demoralized with the performance of former Deputy Peterson. Monkey see, monkey do. I'm sorry. And that's why I called him in and suspended him without pay as we were moving towards termination, and he resigned. Tapper: Did he tell you why he didn't go in? Israel: He did not. Tapper: I'm also told by sources in Coral Springs that Coral Springs police who arrived at the scene saw that 3 other Broward deputies were standing behind cars, not having gone into the building. What can you tell me about that?
What can you tell me about that?
Well, let me be perfectly clear. Our investigation to this point shows that during this horrific attack, while this killer was inside the school, there was only one law enforcement person, period, and that was former Deputy Scott Peterson.
Coral Springs arrived. A group of Coral Springs officers went in within, I think, about 4 minutes, we're projecting, after the killer left the campus. I understand that they're going to give statements to us regarding the other 3, 4, 5 deputies. At this point, we have no reason to believe that anyone acted incorrectly or correctly. That's what an investigation is. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own set of facts. We do know, Jake, that Deputy Peterson at the time uttered, he disseminated information over the police radio. Disseminated information over the police radio, excuse me. We don't know what those deputies heard. Perhaps they did something by what they heard from Peterson. And that will be, you know, outlined in interviews. We will get the truth, but at this point, one deputy we will remiss. We religion our duty, and he is now no longer with this agency, and that's Peterson. Tapper then says, quote, and you're saying that because during the time that the shooter was in the school, you say Peterson was the only one there. But that wasn't known at the time. You know that now because of security cameras you saw when he left the school. Israel says, correct, Tapper. This is after the fact. But when did your deputies, not Peterson, but the others, when did they arrive on the scene? Because Coral Springs sources say when Coral Springs arrived, there were Broward deputies there in addition to Peterson. And I don't Israel says, and I don't dispute that, but that is an active investigation. We have not taken statements yet from the Coral Springs officers. Let's see if we can get this video to play.
Coral Springs arrived. A group of Coral Springs officers went in within, I think, about 4 minutes. We're projecting after the other 3, 4, 5 deputies at this point.
As I said, this is Israel. We're feverishly are dissecting. It's a voluminous investigation. We're taking hundreds and hundreds of statements. And right now, Jake, the focus of this agency is on the successful prosecution of the killer.
So we have no reason to believe that anyone acted incorrectly or correctly. That's what an investigation is. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled
to their own set of facts. As I just got through telling you all. So we're doing that. Our detectives have worked tirelessly. We will investigate all aspects of this case. We will look at all the actions or inactions of every single deputy and leader on our agency, sergeants, lieutenants, captains. And we will make some decisions. But right now, all I can tell you is during the killing, while the killer was on campus with this horrific killing, there was one deputy, one armed person with proximity of that school, and that was Peterson. Everything else is fluid, and as I said, we will get to the truth, but right now people could have conjecture, people could act on rumors, and people have, everybody has the right to their own opinion. Nobody has the right to their own set of facts. Tapper, have you listened to the Israel? The facts will come out. Tapper, have you listened to the radio recordings? Israel, I'm not. But the investigators are, of course. Tapper, okay, but you haven't. You have not heard them, though. Israel, no. But what they're going to do is they're marrying up the audio with the visual, and I was told that one of Peterson's utterances on the radio, I think 1 or 2 times, he actually says shots fired. So you would have to assume that every time, you would have to assume at that time every person who heard that transmission is pushing as fast as they can, code 3 as we call it, to the school, identify the threat, neutralize the target, take the killer out. There comes a point in time later that Peterson makes a transmission that would almost lead one to believe that he's talking about perimeters. So if I know my school resource deputy is talking about perimeter positions, it's absolutely safe to assume incorrectly if that's what actually happened. It's absolutely safe to assume that if a person there is talking about perimeter, that perhaps he sees the killer leaving, and you're going to a perimeter position to catch the killer. But I don't know what was in the mind of the other deputies. I don't know what was in the mind of Peterson. That is why we investigate. All I can tell you is that Tapper's right. It says right. Deputy Peterson. Tapper. But Sheriff, the Thursday, the day after the horrific accident at a vigil, the city manager of Coral Springs confronted you in public. And one of the things he confronted you about is, sources tell me, is the idea that your deputies did not go into the school while children inside were bleeding out. Israel, that's absolutely untrue. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get tickled, but he just sat there and told you that he didn't go in. He just sat there and told you that.
Their own set of facts. We do know, Jake, that Deputy Peterson at the time uttered, he disseminated information over the police radio. We don't know why what those deputies heard. Perhaps they did something by what they heard from Peterson, and that will be, outlined in interviews. We'll get to the truth, but at this point, one deputy was remiss, dereliction of duty, and he's now no longer with this.
Just one. Not there wasn't no more, just one. Just the one. Israel responded and said, that's absolutely untrue. We had a conversation. We were out in public. The only two people who could have heard the conversation were myself and the city manager. It was a conversation. I'm not going to share that conversation. It was very short. The city manager and I have spoken numerous times. We have met. He's a great city manager. He does a great job with Coral Springs. Tapper. Okay. Israel. We have got a great relationship, and it was just two guys having a conversation. Tapper. One of the questions about the response by Broward is whether this was policy to set up a perimeter instead of going in. Earlier this week, you seemed to suggest that your deputies are trained to arrive and not immediately go into the site of the shooting, but rather to create a staging area. Listen to yourself a few days ago talking about what you learned from the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting 13 months ago. Take a listen. They must play that video. I don't know. I haven't listened to this whole interview.
Yeah, you're saying that because during the time that the shooter was in the school, you say Peterson was the only one there. But that wasn't known at the time. You know that now because of security cameras you saw when he left the school. This is correct. After the fact. When did your deputies, not Peterson but the others, when did they arrive on the scene? Because Coral Springs sources say when Coral Springs police arrived.
I say we move on and we try to come back to this because we are wasting a lot of time.
And I don't dispute that, but that is an active investigation. We have not taken some statements yet from the Coral Springs officers. We found out, I believe, 5 or 6 days ago from their police chief that he told one of our colonels about the information. We're going to be taking statements from those Coral Springs police officers. Then we're going to be speaking with if any deputies are alleged to have dereliction of duty. We'll look into that. We don't know what the deputies heard.
Congress steps into thorny gun debate. This is from The Hill, 6/2018 at 8:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Written by Melanie Zanona and Jordan Carney. GOP leaders in the House are preparing a legislative package aimed at bolstering school safety at Florida high school that left 17 dead and opened a national debate over guns. Quote, "We're going to do a lot on school safety," end quote, Representative Steve Stivers, Republican from Ohio, chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, told The Hill. He said the effort aimed at school campuses but will also include some gun-related measures. Quote, "Part of that's gun stuff, but part of that's school safety stuff," end quote, he said. Going on to say, quote, "You may see something introduced this week, but obviously you won't see it past this week," end quote, Stivers told The Hill, referring to the shortened work week in the House. Quote, "But pretty quickly you'll see it soon," end quote. The legislative effort comes after President Trump called last week for more teachers to be armed in response to the shooting. Trump has also called for background check legislation, raising the age limit from purchasing assault weapons to 21 and banning bump stocks, which increase a semi-automatic weapons rate of fire. But the president has been particularly focused on ending gun-free zones around schools, which he argues serves as an invitation for would-be shooters and for arming at least some teachers and administrators so that they could fire back. Trump met with National Rifle Association leaders over the weekend and spoke with Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell last week. He is set to meet with a bipartisan group of lawmakers on Wednesday, which is today. Republican Mark Meadows of North Carolina, the chairman of the conservative House Freedom Caucus and a lawmaker who frequently talks to Trump, said the, quote, "biggest thing," end quote, he is looking at is how to address safety on school campuses. Meadows said he is eyeing a number of options, including increasing money for school resource officers and providing some incentives to allow teachers and school administrators to carry weapons. A number of Republicans across the country have suggested their views on gun restrictions are shifting in response to the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Student survivors of the shooting have taken their emotional plea directly to cable television, Florida's Capitol, and the White House, building momentum for new measures. Florida Governor Rick Scott and Senator Marco Rubio, two Republicans long seen as allies of the NRA, have both came out in support of raising the age limit on assault rifle purchases to 21. Separately, a number of polls have shown broad support for background checks and other gun controls, underlining the sense that the Stoneman Douglas shooting might have represented a tipping point in the nation's long debate on guns. At the same time, it's far from clear that legislation to raise the federal age limit on gun purchases would have the necessary support to pass Congress. The NRA is solidly opposed to that proposal. And Trump on Monday notably left it out of his comments while speaking to a group of the nation's governors at the White House. In comments later on Monday afternoon, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Trump remained supportive of the, quote, concept, unquote, of raising the age limit, but would need to see legislation on how it's implemented. Quote, in concept, the president still supports it, but in terms of legislation, we'd need to see what that looks like before we weigh in further, end quote, she said. Senator Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, who backed a bipartisan gun reform proposal after the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, appeared skeptical of raising the age limit, while a spokeswoman from Senator Ted Cruz's said he opposes the idea. Quote, I believe we need more idiot control, not more gun control, end quote, said GOP Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, while pledging to carefully review any legislation. Gun rights supporters have distancing themselves from the age proposal, and House conservatives have also expressed concern about a bill Trump. When the idea came up last year, conservatives demonstrated it be paired with the concealed weapon reciprocity bill. Contentious legislation that would have effectively allowed concealed weapons to be carried across the country. The proposal is a major priority of the NRA and many conservatives, but staunchly opposed by Democrats. Several Republicans on Monday pointed to the difficulty of getting a consensus of a gun measure. Quote, I'm for doing what's achievable. If we want to get bogged down again and do nothing, to me, that's unacceptable, end quote, said John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, the number 2 senator Republican. Quote, so we're going to try to figure out a path forward, end quote. Republican Ryan Costello, Republican from Pennsylvania, who also faces a tough re-election after court-ordered redistricting in Pennsylvania, supports a bipartisan background check bill, but acknowledged other Republicans worry it could lead to calls for more reforms they would oppose. Costello said while he and most of his constituents, quote, feel a certain way, others feel differently about this issue given what they feel might come next, end quote. Rubio on Tuesday is expected to try to pass it unanimously, consent the bipartisan fix NICS National Instant Criminal Background Check System act which would reinforce existing laws by ensuring the authorities report criminal records to the system and penalizing agencies that don't. But it's unlikely to be successful with a band of GOP senators opposed to the legislation. A spokesman for Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, said they have, quote, some due process concerns, end quote, but are trying to work them out with the bill's sponsors. The House passed similar legislation last December, but only after it was paired with concealed carry reciprocity bill. A group of 19 centrist Republicans called on Ryan to put the fixed NICS bill on the House floor, ramping up pressure on leadership to delink the measure from the concealed carry legislation. Quote, we would take a piece of that bill that most people agree with and pass that, end quote, Costello said. Cornyn said on Monday he was, quote, pretty optimistic, end quote, the House could pass his bill if it went over as a standalone measure. So you're definitely going to see some legislation on this. Different things depending on which state or which school districts, or just depending on where you live, you're going to see different things starting to happen, starting to take shape over the next few weeks, maybe even months.
On the radio, Coral Springs and the Broward Sheriff's Office, we have different radio systems. So we don't know what one was hearing vis-a-vis what the other was hearing. All I can tell you is we will investigate every action of our deputies, of their supervisors, and if they did things right, we'll move forward. And if they did things wrong, I will take care of business in a disciplinary manner like I did with Peterson.
And just so people who are watching at home understand, even after the shooter left the school,
he needs to take action on himself instead of sitting there tearing Peterson down to raise
decision
himself
coming late
up.
tonight as the gun control debate rages on. In response to the shooting, Broward Sheriff Scott Israel announcing the deputies that patrol high schools in county will be equipped with rifles. And as NBC decision coming late tonight as the gun control debate rages on. In response to the shooting, Broward Sheriff Scott Israel announcing the deputies that patrol high schools in the county will be equipped with rifles. And as NBC6 reporter Jamie Garola tells us, Miami-Dade is also taking new measures in the name of safety. Jamie.
Yeah, well, they are just proposed changes right now, but Miami-Dade being extremely proactive, but quickly rejecting Trump's idea to arm teachers.
Am I supposed to have a Kevlar vest? Am I supposed to strap it to my leg or put it on my desk? How am I supposed to go on that way?
Tonight, reaction is swift to this coming out of the White House.
It's called concealed carry, where a teacher would have a concealed gun on them. They'd go for special training, and they would be there, and you would no longer have a gun-free zone.
Trump's comments came as he spoke to families of survivors of mass shootings. In a town hall, this Marjorie Stoneman Douglas teacher says she has enough to worry about besides being armed.
What happened when the SWAT team came in, the first question they asked is anybody injured, and the following question is does anybody have a gun? And I wouldn't want to be the person saying yes, I do.
Broward superintendent got a standing ovation for his response.
we don't need to put guns in the hands of teachers.
You know what we need? We need to arm our teachers with more money in their pocket.
And in Miami-Dade, Superintendent Alberto Gallo also slammed the idea of teachers with weapons.
I respect teachers too much, and I respect their voice too much, and I respect the voice of students who unequivocally, yesterday in Tallahassee and over the past week, have told me they want to feel safe.
Beginning, the Broward sheriff says he's not wasting time, announcing his deputies will carry rifles on school grounds.
Will be done safely. Only deputies who have trained and qualified will carry those rifles. But we need to be able to any threat that comes onto campus.
And that does not appear to be the case here in Miami-Dade. The superintendent tells me there are no plans to allow officers to walk around campus with rifles. Reporting live tonight in Miami, Jamie Garola, NBC 6 News.
So there you have it. They're going to pack guns to school in Broward County. The deputies are going to carry rifles. That's a little bit of a legislation change.
There was a period of time where nobody was going into the school. Nobody knew that the shooter had left the school, so officers needed to go in. One of the things that we've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, I can hope you can shed some light on it, is that there might have been a stand-down order. Somebody on the radio telling Broward deputies not to enter the school until a SWAT team arrived. What can you tell us about that?
I can't tell you
Nah, I can't tell you nothing because it
anything about that. I haven't heard that. As I said, we feverishly are dissecting. It's a voluminous investigation. We're taking hundreds and hundreds of statements. And right,
it's a voluminous investigation. It's a voluminous investigation.
now, Jake, the focus of this agency is on the successful prosecution of the killer. So we're doing that. Our detective.
You gotta hand it to Jakey Tappy boy here. He has really made Sheriff Israel stutter, squirm even. And I don't even know if he's trying to. He's even tried to give the sheriff some credit by saying that it was all part of their master plan to set up a perimeter around the shooter. You know, the reason that they didn't enter the school. Then he pops off in that little clip and asks if there was a stand down order. that was awesome. This article here is from the Lexington Herald Leader at Kentucky.com. This Kentucky school district just voted to let teachers carry concealed guns. Written by Will Wright. February 27th, 2018 at 11:06 a.m. Pikeville. Teachers could soon be carrying concealed guns inside schools in Pike County under a proposal that was preliminarily approved Monday evening by the Pike County School Board. The unanimous decision came after the board heard concerns about school safety from teachers, parents, and administrators during a town hall meeting at Pike County Central High School. The discussion was prompted by multiple school shootings in recent weeks, including one at Marshall County High School in western Kentucky that left 2 dead, and another in Florida that left 17 dead. The motion authorizes the school board's attorney to work with Pike County Sheriff's Office, which would oversee the program, to finalize a normal policy for the school board to consider. Pike County School Superintendent Reed Atkins said he hopes the board will give final approval within 2 to 3 weeks and have armed the staff in schools by fall, if not sooner. You hope you're making the quote. You hope you're making the right decision for kids, but I know right now something's got to be done. End quote. Atkins said, going on to say, quote, "We may be criticized, but at the end of the day, I'll take criticism to protect my students." End quote. And that is about as well spoken a statement as I've heard ever since this tragedy occurred 2 weeks ago. I would take criticism any day over the safety of my children. Okay? John Akers, Executive Director of the Kentucky Center for School Safety, said Tuesday there are no schools in Kentucky that allow teachers to carry guns, and that, quote, "every educational group across the country," end quote, opposes the idea. Nearly everyone who spoke at the meeting, though, supported arming staffers who would be trained by the sheriff's office. Quote, "This program could be a model for the rest of the state and possibly the country," end quote, said State Senator Ray Jones, Democrat from Pikeville, who attended the meeting. Many also offered other suggestions to improve school security, such as door locks and cameras and more counseling opportunities for troubled students. Under the new proposal, school employees could volunteer to serve as concealed carry guards at schools throughout the county. Each volunteer would be subject to a background test, drug test, mental evaluation, and a qualification course, including firearms training, led by the sheriff's office, which offered to provide the training for free. Quote, "This is not an action to force teachers to do something they're uncomfortable with or are unwilling to do," end quote, said Timothy Klein, an English teacher at Pike County Central High School, who supported the effort. Quote, "It's a big decision, granted, but it's one we need to make now," end quote. Superintendent of Pike County Schools Reed Atkins on the left and Pike County School Board Chairman Justin Maynard on the right. Here you see a picture of them. Each armed person would have a requalify multiple times a year, possibly as many as 4 times, to serve as an armed guard, said Eddie Crum, a detective with the sheriff. Crum also said the sheriff's office will perform unannounced inspections to assure the firearms are properly concealed and that the deputies are in compliance with the program's guidelines. Quote, "I think it's a good idea if it's ran right," end quote, Crum said. firearms training would include shooting at paper targets and more incentive combat training, said Lynn Cross, Chief Deputy at the Sheriff's Office. Akers, with the Kentucky Center for School Safety, said Tuesday that the idea of teachers carrying guns, quote, scares me to death, end quote. Going on to say, quote, I don't want to put down their ideas and their efforts down there, but I want them to proceed very cautiously, Akers said. Arming, quote, arming people who are not trained equal to that of law enforcement officers is risky, end quote. Akers said armed staff could do more harm than good in a school shooting if by accidentally shooting an innocent student or by causing confusion among law enforcement who arrive at the scene. The most important way to prevent mass shootings is to develop relationships between students and teachers, he said. Many at Monday's meeting who supported arming teachers also complained about poor security at Pike County schools. Quote, a gunman could walk in at any time and kill those kids, end quote, said Connie Compton, a teacher at Shelby Valley High School. Quote, my room is within 5 seconds of a door that can go in and out of at any time, end quote. Compton said that before thinking about armed, quote, resource officers, end quote, another term for sworn law enforcement officers, quote, we need to get schools locked down first, end quote. The idea of arming teachers has created a political controversy in recent weeks, with President Donald Trump backing the idea while others push for gun control measures, including a ban on high-powered semi-auto rifles.
Because we should not, as parents, be concerned about our children going to school, nor should children and or teachers going to those schools.
This is Governor Matt Bevin.
Because we should not, as parents, be concerned about our children going to school, nor should children and or teachers going to those schools be concerned about the fact that while they
State Senator John Schickel, Republican Union, has introduced State Resolution 172 that would urge boards of education to allow teachers and other school personnel to carry firearms. Someone, including a teacher or other school staff, to allow them to carry firearms on school grounds, according to state education officials. Another proposal, Senate Bill 103, would allow public and private schools in Kentucky that cannot afford to hire a resource officer to designate one of their employees as an armed, quote, school marshal, end quote. I think we got this video of Governor Matt Bevin ready to play. Let's try it.
Because we should not, as parents, be concerned about our children going to school, nor should children and or teachers going to those schools be concerned about the fact that while they are a gun-free zone, it's what makes them in some measure, to those who want to do harm, a more vulnerable target. That's a problem. What is the solution? I don't know. I've not yet read this bill. I've not seen it. I appreciate the sentiment behind it. The details matter. It may be the right bill. It may need to be modified. There may be some other version of it. But I share Senator West's belief that we need to be smarter about how we protect our students, teachers, and our society as a whole. Thank you all.
Thank you.
School resource officers are sworn law enforcement officers with specialized training and established relationships with local police agencies, but given budget constraints, there are only 230 of them in roughly half of Kentucky counties, according to the Kentucky Center for School Safety. Fayette County Schools employ 35 resource officers to watch over its 67 schools and programs. In response to recent school shootings, the district has created a safety advisory panel to consider the idea of stationary metal detectors in schools, and it's implementing several other security upgrades, including expansion of its anonymous tip lines, providing schools with more handheld metal detector ones, and expanding emergency drills.
Well, I think the best position possible is to have trained law enforcement officers. My vision is to have a law enforcement officer in each and every school. You need someone who is trained to respond when there's an active threat, but also there daily to build relationships, and as well as has the training and the psychological training, mental wherewithal to be able to act under duress. I would say that as superintendent, speaking for myself, as your servant superintendent, instead of asking our teachers to put their lives on the line, I would be willing to do that and serve in that capacity. That's just me, because I believe that the first responders, if I'm truly a servant, I want to be able to be there to help in any way that I can. But I do think that instead of a better strategy, instead of arming teachers, is to have law enforcement officers in each and every school.
That was FCPS Superintendent Emmanuel Manny Calk. In Pike County, employing law enforcement officers rather than allowing volunteers to carry guns would cost more than $1 million annually, far more than the county could afford, officials said. Multiple mothers are saying their children have been scared to attend school. Other citizens said they were concerned that teachers would not be emotionally able to shoot one of their current or former students in a mass shooting scenario. Quote, to know whether or not you can take a round or give a round, you'll never know until you're there, end quote, said Atkins, the school superintendent, going on to say, quote, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be much better than where we sit today, end quote. In addition to the new program, school officials said they plan to conduct active shooter scenario training at all schools in the county before the next school year begins. Officials said they are also planning to conduct evaluations of school security systems. Potential upgrades could include locking mechanisms that allow each teacher to lock their individual classrooms, and better systems to secure main school entrances. Officials said they do not yet know how many staff will carry guns throughout the county, but said each school will likely have more than one armed staff member. Quote, this decision is not easy, deciding to put weapons in a school that you're trying to keep weapons out of, end quote, said Pike County School Board Chairman Justin Maynard. Quote, I don't know that it stops school shootings. I think it ultimately minimizes it, end quote.
January 23rd, 2018, Marshall County High School, Benton, Kentucky.
But that's some of the measures that local education officials and school board members are taking to better accommodate the safety of our Kentucky students. Now, let's see if we can listen to some more of this interview by Jake Tapper on Scott Israel, Sheriff Scott Israel from Broward County.
We will investigate all aspects of this case. We will look at all the actions or inactions of every single deputy and leader on our agency, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and we'll make some decisions. But right now, all I can tell you is during the killing, there was while the killer was on campus with this horrific killing, there was one deputy, one armed person within the proximity of that school, and that was
Deputy Scott Peterson, of course. Who else would it be? It wouldn't be the coward from Broward. No way, Jose.
Huff talking about your deputy, school resource officer, Scott Peterson.
The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there. And he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the building. And shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over. He was just talking on the radio, and in 1 minute, he's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and all, he has all that while school security guards, coaches pretty much, were running in, shielding kids.
Sheriff, how do you respond to this student?
All what the students said, our video and audio and all the witness statements we have taken corroborates that. That's what I saw, and when I saw that, I was disgusted. I was just demoralized with the performance of former Deputy Peterson, and that's why I called him in and suspended him without pay as we were going to move towards termination, and he resigned.
Did he tell you why he didn't go in?
He did not.
I'm also told by sources in Coral Springs that Coral Springs police who arrived at the scene saw that 3 other Broward deputies were standing behind cars, not having gone into the building. What can you tell me about that?
Well, let me be perfectly clear. Our investigation to this point shows that during this horrific attack, while this killer was inside the school, there was only one law enforcement person, period, and that was former Deputy Scott Peterson. Coral Springs arrived. A group of Coral Springs officers went in. Within, I think, about 4 minutes, we're projecting, after the killer left the campus. I understand that they're going to give statements to us regarding the other 3, 4, 5 deputies. At this point, we have no reason to believe that anyone acted incorrectly or correctly. That's what an investigation is. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own set of facts. We do know, Jake, that Deputy Peterson at the time uttered, he disseminated information over the police radio. We don't know why those if they did something by what they heard from Peterson, and that will be, outlined in interviews. We'll get to the truth, but at this point, one deputy was remiss, dereliction of duty, and he's now no longer with this agency.
Yeah,
Peterson.
You're saying that because during the time that the shooter was in the school, you say Peterson was the only one there. But
now hold on. Now you're telling me that while the shooting went on, there was one deputy in the school. Now, just let Mr. Jake Tapper here get it correct.
That wasn't known at the time. You know that now because of security cameras you saw when he left the school. This is after the fact. But when did your deputies, not Peterson but the others, when did they arrive on the scene? Because Coral Springs sources say when Coral Springs police arrived, there were Broward deputies there in addition to Peterson.
Yeah.
And I don't dispute that, but that is an active investigation. We have not taken statements yet from the Coral Springs officers. We found out, I believe, 5 or 6 days ago from their police chief that he told one of our colonels about the information. We're going to be taking statements from those Coral Springs police officers. Then we're going to be speaking with our deputies. If any deputies are alleged to have dereliction of duty, we'll look into that. We don't know what the deputies heard on the radio. Coral Springs and the Broward Sheriff's Office, we have different radio systems. So we don't know what one was hearing vis-a-vis what the other was hearing. All I can tell you is we will investigate every action of our deputies, of their supervisors, and if they did things right, we'll move forward. And if they did things wrong, I will take care of business in a disciplinary manner like I did with Peterson.
Just so people who are watching at home understand, even after the shooter left the school, there was a period of time where nobody was going into the school, no law enforcement officers. People were bleeding out. Nobody knew that the shooter had left the school, so officers needed to go in. One of the things that we've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, I hope you can show, there might have been a stand-down order. Somebody on the radio telling Broward deputies not to enter the school until a SWAT team arrived. What can you tell us about that?
I can't tell you anything about that.
I
haven't heard that. As I said, we feverishly are dissecting. It's a voluminous investigation. We're taking hundreds and hundreds of statements. And right now, Jake, the focus of this agency is on the successful prosecution of the killer. So we're doing that. Our detectives have worked tirelessly. We will investigate all aspects of this case. We will look at all the actions or inactions of every single deputy and leader on our agency, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and we'll make some decisions. Now, all I can tell you is during the killing, there was while the killer was on campus with this horrific killing, there was one deputy, one armed person within the proximity of that school, and that was Peterson. Everything else is fluid, and as I said, we we will get to the truth. But right now, people have conjecture, people could act on rumors, and people have, you know, everybody has the right to their own opinion, but nobody has the right to their own set of facts.
Have you listened to the
facts will come out.
Have you listened to the radio recordings?
Why now?
Yeah, I'm not, but so of course.
Okay, but you haven't. You have not heard them though.
No, but what they're doing now is they're marrying up the audio with the visual. And I was told that one of Peterson's utterances on the radio, I think 1 or 2 times, he actually says shots fired. So you would have to assume at that time every person who heard that transmission is pushing as fast as they can, code 3 as we call it, to the school, identify the threat, neutralize the target, take the killer out. There comes a point in time later that Peterson makes a transition that would almost lead one to believe that he's talking about perimeters. So if I know my school resource deputy is talking about perimeter positions, it's absolutely safe to assume, incorrectly, if that's what actually happened, it's absolutely safe to assume that if a person there is talking about perimeter, that perhaps he sees and you're going to a perimeter position to catch the killer. But I don't know deputies, I don't know what was in the mind of Peterson. This is why we investigate. All I can tell you is that from the time I heard about this, I did what needed to be done with former Deputy Peterson.
The Thursday, the day after the horrific...
He just sat right there and told you that he didn't know what was on Peterson's mind when he was sitting there, you know, standing down, not on his, just sitting there on his radio, not responding to the shooting. He didn't know what was on Peterson's mind. He didn't know what was on the other deputy's mind. He just went ahead and dealt with Peterson, you know.
Incident at a vigil. The city manager for Coral Springs confronted you in public, and one of the things he confronted you about, sources tell me, is the idea that your deputies did not go into the school while children inside were bleeding out.
That's absolutely untrue. We had a conversation. We were out in public. The only 2 people who could have heard the conversation were myself and the city manager. It was a conversation. I'm not going to share that conversation. It was very short. The city manager and I have spoken numerous times. We've met. He's a great city manager. He does a great job with Coral Springs. We got a great relationship, and it was just 2 guys having a conversation.
One of the questions about the response by Broward is whether this was policy to set up a perimeter instead of going in. Earlier this week, you seem to suggest that your deputies are trained to arrive and not immediately go into the site of the shooting, but rather to create a staging area. Listen to yourself a few days ago talking about what you learned from the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting 13 months ago. Take a listen.
One of the key lessons we learned from the airport was the phenomenon of self-dispatching and not allowing deputies and police officers from all over the Tri-County area to just arrive haphazardly. And we had staging areas, and people who went to a staging area, and they were inserted into the mission in a common sense way, and everybody had a job to do.
See, that sounds to a lot of people like the opposite of what police forces learned after Columbine, which is when you arrive, you don't wait, you run in.
I'm glad you asked that question. Jake, you're completely talking apples and oranges, and I'm glad you brought that up. When we have a horrific incident of any magnitude,
you're talking apples and oranges.
Incident is over, and people are arriving to help, and we know we have 5, 10 hours of work to do. We have our deputies, police officers, firefighters go to staging areas so we can insert them in a clear and concise manner into the scenario, into the event. People will come into the airport. We didn't have an active shooter. He was already in custody 72 seconds after the event. This is an active shooter. We push to the entry, to the killer. We get in and we take out the threat. Completely different set of circumstances,
Sheriff,
Jake.
When did you...
So how come you didn't do that? Lick him lips. Look at that. See that? Do you see that? Right there. You see my little cursor going around that. Jesus.
Find out that Deputy Peterson had not gone into the building? How soon after the shooting did you know that?
Not for days.
Didn't know it for days.
How many days?
Investigators looked. I'm not sure.
Because you spent much of the Wednesday night town hall on CNN with the entire Stoneman Douglas community, students and teachers and parents, attacking the NRA, saying that police need more powers, more money to prevent future tragedies. You didn't disclose any of this to the crowd then, the Stoneman Douglas high school community. Did you know it then? Did you know it Wednesday night?
It was spoken about during that earlier during that day. I'm not on a timeline for TV or any news show. We need to get it right. We need to get it accurate. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about a community. We need to corroborate. We need to verify. And once we did the next day, and I looked at the tape, and I was 100% certain that it happened the way I was told about. The investigators initially told about. I didn't even release it right.
You didn't look at the video? 1 week after the shooting, you hadn't looked at the video yet?
I looked at the video as soon as our investigators, it wasn't my job to look at the video, it was investigators' job to look at the video. I'm still sheriffing this county. There were many things to do. We have investigators, homicide investigators, internal affairs investigators dissecting it. And when they felt there was a video that ready for my view, that I might take action on one of our deputies, I looked at the video. And let me add this, Jake. Once I saw the video, the first order I gave was for our detectives to notify the families that those lost, the families. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the families come first, and I wanted to make sure the families knew what happened and what was about to happen.
The families were at the CNN town hall, sir. Sir, the families were at the CNN town hall, and you could have disclosed to them.
That's not. We didn't. I couldn't disclose it then because there was no corroboration, Jake. There was no confirmation. We needed to dot I's and cross T's, and I certainly would not disclose it to a family at a town hall. Not every family was there. One of the families, Mr. Pollack, had gone to Washington D.C. That's not the way you do things over a news camera. You do it individually. You meet privately with families. You have compassion. You don't do it at a public forum.
Right, but your tone at the public forum, sir. Your tone at the public forum was rather belligerent towards the NRA, and you were talking about needing more police protection, more police funding and more police powers, and yet you knew,
that's not...
No, it's not. That wasn't your tone?
That's not true. Jake, that's not true at all. I wasn't belligerent towards the NRA. I took a passionate stance, as I always have, about common sense gun reform and expanding police ability throughout our country when we come in contact with someone mentally ill to take them to a facility to take guns away from them. There was no belligerence at all, and I completely disagree with it.
Let's talk about the response. A medical first responder told local news station, WSVN, that medical personnel were asking to go into the school, but law enforcement wouldn't let them. He told WSVN, quote, "Everything I was trained on mass casualty events says they did the wrong thing. You don't wait for the scene to be cleared. You go in immediately, armed, retrieve the victims. You can't leave the victims laying there." What's your response to that, sir?
I agree with that. That's very accurate. That is what you do. Once the killer leaves the scene of a mass casualty, it's still an active killer scene. There are people wounded, people lives could be saved. And let me say this: Coral Springs Police, Broward Sheriff's deputies, we did carry people out there. These deputies and the Coral Springs police officers are credited with saving quite a few lives by getting people medical attention.
But did you prevent medical people from going inside?
No, once the scene is, medical people wouldn't go inside until you're sure that they're not going to get killed inside.
This person told WSVN he wanted to go in. This medical personnel, emergency first responder, wanted to go in and wasn't allowed to.
Jake, I'm hearing that for the first time. If you know who the person is, please have him contact me or the Broward Sheriff's Office, and we will interview him. We will take statements from him, and if that's true, that's certainly something we'll look into. But I'm hearing this for the first time.
It's WSVN. We'll get back to you, I'm sure. Let's talk about the missed red flags. We now know at least 18 calls were made to the Broward County Sheriff's Office related to the shooter. prior to the shooting. Let's talk about them. In February 2016, your office received a call that the shooter made a threat on Instagram to shoot up a school. One of your deputies responded, and according to your records released, the information was forwarded to Deputy Peterson at the school. What, if anything, was done with that information?
I'm not sure if anything was done with that information. I do know as far as notifying the person or notifying either Palm Beach Sheriff's Office or one of the local jurisdictions, depending on where the killer was living at the time. But Peterson did, if I'm not mistaken, he did receive medicine. He did get medical treatment. And as I said, of those 18 calls, 2 of those calls are 16 of them we believe were handled exactly the way they should. 2 of them, we're not sure if our deputies did everything they could have or should have. That's not to say they didn't. That's to say they did.
Which are the two?
One was the call from a woman in Massachusetts, and the other one escapes me right now. But we're looking into those 2 calls. We will absolutely find out what we did or what we didn't do, and as I said in a press conference a few days ago, and we'll handle that accordingly.
One of them in September 2006.
But hold on one second, Jay.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the whole crux of this is giving law enforcement, giving deputies, giving police officers, not only in Broward County, but in Florida and around the nation, expanded power to be able to do something more than just write a report. That's the whole reason I went on CNN.
Isn't making a threat against a school a crime?
Not if the person doesn't have the ability to carry it out. You could say a non-specific threat, I'm going to go to a school, or that it's not a crime. We need it to be a crime, or at least we need it to be able to say if a person makes a non-specific threat, what an assault is a threat coupled with the apparent ability to carry it out. If the person doesn't have the apparent ability to carry it out, it's not a crime.
In September 2016, the shooter indicated he wanted to buy a gun. Deputy Peterson knew about that. He initiated a report. The school launched a threat assessment. At this point, you have somebody saying that they're going to shoot up a school and somebody with a gun. That's not enough?
No. That's not enough. And that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change the laws so we could either arrest that person, but more importantly, get that person to a medical facility. Because if you arrest a person, there's going to be a time where they get out of jail anyway. We want to get people medical help for mental illnesses, continual medical help. And then when they get out of the medical facility and a doctor says they're better, that doesn't mean they're better. That means they're rehabbing. We want to be able to take their guns away from them for a long, long period of time. And that's what the governor is going to be, Governor Scott is going to be introducing his proposal. I read it, and it's a giant, giant step in the right direction.
Sheriff, how about this? How about this? In November, the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, not your office, but a neighboring office, responded to a call from a woman who had taken the shooter in and his brother after the death of their mother. She told police that the shooter had gotten into a physical fight with her son and threatened to go get his gun and come back. She also said he had used guns to threaten people before and had put a gun to others' heads in the past. That's a crime. Were you aware of that incident?
No, I wasn't aware of that incident, but if a person had a gun put to their head and they were the victim of that type of incident, that's an aggravated assault. That's an absolute felony. That is a crime, and a person should be arrested for that. I don't know if the victim wanted to cooperate. It was in Palm Beach County. I don't know the nuances and the specifics of the case, but that absolutely is a crime.
On November 30th, fewer than 3 months ago, your office received a call from a tipster explicitly saying that the Cruz could be a, quote, school shooter in the making. According to notes released on that call, no report was even initiated. At this point, sir, do you understand how the public, seeing red flag after red flag after red flag, warning after warning after warning, they hear that your office didn't even initiate a report when they got a call saying that this guy could be a school shooter in the making? How could there not even be a report on this one?
Well, if that's accurate, Jake, there needed to be a report, and that's what we're looking into. That a report needed to be completed. It needed to be forwarded to our either Homeland Security or Violent Crimes Unit, and they would have followed up on it.
That's from your notes. That's from notes released by your office. I'm not making this up. This is from Broward.
No, and that's what. That the officer who handled that is on restrictive duty, and that's an active internal investigation, and we are looking into it. I can't tell you, I can't predict how an investigation's going, but I've exercised my due diligence. I've led this county proudly as always have. We have restricted that deputy as we look into it. Their deputies make mistakes. Officers make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but it's not the responsibility of the general or the president if you have a deserter. You'll look into this, we're looking into this aggressively, and we'll take care of it, and justice will be served.
Are you really not taking any responsibility for the multiple red flags that were brought to the attention of the Broward Sheriff's Office about this shooter before the incident, whether it was people near him, close to him, calling the police on him?
Jake, I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercise my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I work.
Even Jake had to question that one. Amazing leadership? That was too cool. Let's back that up.
I exercise my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked. Yes, Jake.
Yes, Jake.
There's a lot of things we've done throughout this.
We've done a lot of stuff.
You don't measure a person's leadership by a deputy not going into these deputies received the training they needed.
Maybe you measure somebody's leadership by whether or not they protect the community. In this case, you've listed 23 incidents before the shooting involving the shooter, and still nothing was done to keep guns out of his hands, to make sure that the school was protected, to make sure you were keeping an eye on him. Your deputy at the school failed. I don't understand how you can sit there and claim amazing leadership.
Jake, on 16 of those cases, our deputies did everything right. Our deputies done amazing things. We've taken this, in the 5 years I've been sheriff, we've taken the Broward Sheriff's Office to a new level. I work with some of the bravest people I've ever met. One person, at this point, one person didn't do what he should have done. It's horrific. The victims here, the families, I pray for them every night. It makes my wall. I would have been the first then.
I think there are a lot of people, sir, who think that there are a lot of mistakes other than that one deputy. But let me ask you something else. A lot of people in the community have noted that the Broward County School Board entered into an agreement when you were sheriff in 2013 to pursue the, quote, punitive means of discipline against students. This news policy.
Right here is where he's talking about the Promise program, folks. The Promise program is something that was introduced by the Obama administration to keep like misdemeanor crimes committed by students at a school disciplinary level and not letting it get to a need for law enforcement to handle it, that and it being on their criminal record. This is what allowed this kid, this Nicholas Cruz, to buy an AR-15 when he was 18 or 19. You know, if there would have been charges put against this kid before this ever happened, he wouldn't have been able to purchase the firearm. He would have been considered a threat, not only to people around him, but himself too. And he could have been receiving the help that he should have. But we'll get back to this. Let's let Jake finish up his interview.
Policy encouraged warnings, consultations with parents, and programs on conflict resolution instead of arresting students for crimes. Were there not incidents committed by this shooter as a student had this new policy not been in place that otherwise he would have been arrested for and not able to legally buy a gun?
What you're referring to is the Promise program, and it's giving the school has the ability, under certain circumstances, not to call the police, not to get the police involved on misdemeanor offenses, and take care of it within the school. It's an excellent program. It's helping many people. What this program does is not put a person at 14, 15, 16 years old into the criminal justice system.
What if he should be in the criminal justice system? What if he does something violent to a student? What if he takes bullets to school? What if he takes knives to school? What if he threatens the lives of fellow students?
Then he goes to jail. That's not
what happened
in the Promise program.
But that's not what happened with the shooter.
If you're telling me that the shooter took knives to school or bullets to school and police knew about it?
I don't know if police knew about it.
No.
I know that the agreement that you entered into with the school allowed the school to give this kid excuse after excuse after excuse, while obviously...
Not for bullets, not for bullets, not for guns, not for knives, not for felonies, not for anything like that. These are infractions within the school, small amounts of marijuana, some misdemeanors. You're absolutely exacerbating it.
There are teachers at that school. There are teachers at the school had been told, if you see Cruz come on campus with a backpack, let me know. Does that not indicate that there is something seriously awry with the Promise program if these teachers are being told, watch out for this kid, and you don't know about it?
We don't know that that has anything to do with the Promise program. I didn't hear about this until after the fact. I have heard about this information about a week ago. I do know about it. I don't know who the teacher was. It hasn't been corroborated, but that has nothing to do with the Promise program. I can't, nor can any other Broward Sheriff's deputy handle anything or act upon something you don't know about. There's no malfeasance or misfeasance if you don't know about something.
He asked a question at the town hall of you, so you can find him if you want. I have one last question for you, sir. Florida State Representative Bill Hager from Boca sent a letter to the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, yesterday, asking him to remove you for negligence of duty and incompetence. Here's what he wrote, quote, an investigation by Sheriff Israel into the unfathomable inaction of these deputies will do nothing to bring back the 17 victims. The sheriff was fully aware of the threat this individual presented to his community and chose to ignore it. What's your response, and will you resign?
It was a shame. No, of course I won't resign. It was a shameful letter. It was politically motivated. I never met that man. He doesn't know anything about me. And the letter was full of misinformation. I wrote a letter back to the governor. I talked about all the mistakes that Hager made in his letter. It was a shameful, politically motivated letter that had no facts. And of course I won't resign.
The last question, sir. Do you think that if the Broward Sheriff's Office had done things differently, this shooting might not have happened?
Listen, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books.
I don't know what that means. There's 17 dead people, and there's a whole long list of things your department could have done differently.
How could I? Listen, that's what after action reports are. That's for lessons learned reports are for. I have entered into conversation with Chuck Wexler of the Police Executive Research Forum. They will be coming to town to do an independent after action lessons learned report. We understand everything wasn't done perfectly, and if it happened in Los Angeles or Chicago or any other city, every person wouldn't perform perfectly. That's not what happens. Yes, if Scott Peterson went into, do I believe if Scott Peterson went into that building, there was a chance he could have neutralized the killer and saved lives? Yes, I believe that. But as far as anything else done at this point, I can't say that.
Well, we hope you get to the bottom of it.
I might say it. What's that?
We hope you get to the bottom of it, sir. There are a lot of people wondering about a lot of questions.
We will. We will, and there's no timeline on it other than to work as fast as we can, but we want to get it right. We want to get it accurate. When we come to the public, we want accurate information, and we're not going to push forward to meet the timeline of a show or a newscast.
All right. I appreciate it, and our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Parkland and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Thank you for being here and answering my questions, sir.
You bet. Thank you for having me on.
they're not going to investigate or solve their investigation on the timeline of a news show, okay, folks? So, you know, just sit back and watch this show, and they won't be done by the time it's over, by the time it starts back, but they're gonna get to the bottom of it, folks. I guarantee you.
If you find that whenever you look at your task list, you get
This particular video right here is the one that I wanted to watch. I'm sure y'all have seen David Hogg on TV here lately. It's this little dweeb. He's been pushing for gun control, pushing for if only if all he can get done, he wants legislation in Florida for the age to buy an assault rifle moved up to age 21. He keeps pushing these Democratic talking points, which is very, very, very obvious.
We'd be on to the next story. We, meaning the national news media, we'd be moving on. Some reporters would remain on scene, trying to find out what the motive was, trying to find out about the survivors, but most reporters would be home by now, or maybe they'd be off covering the next shooting. Clearly, this time is different. The school shooting in Parkland, Florida is still very much in the news. And that's in large part thanks to the work of the students from the high school who are becoming activists now, who are planning a march that's less than a month from today that's expected to draw thousands. Now, we've seen several of these student activists, these leaders, take to the airwaves, not just right after the shooting, but again this weekend, trying to keep their cause on the forefront of everyone's minds. There are other reasons why the shooting still remains in the news as well. One of them are the excuses, these ridiculous excuses we're hearing from the police about their failures to enter the school more quickly and try to save lives. There's also a third reason why it remains in the news. Those conspiracy theories you've heard about. These sick smears that have been published on the web against some of the student survivors. These conspiracy theories are a form of pollution. Just like fake news, these kinds of ideas, they poison the media environment and they make all of us sick. It's a challenge for technology companies, a challenge for newsrooms, a challenge for politicians, and for all of us as ordinary users of the web to try to come to grips with all of these theories, these lies, these hoaxes that spread virally after a tragedy. So let's start there with David Hogg. He's a senior from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School who survived the shooting, who was able to capture video during and after, and he's now been a subject of these attacks.
Look here, sitting next to him, Dan Rather. He's getting ready to fart dust while he's sitting there on air.
And Dan Rather is also back with us here at the table. David, I have a lot I wanted to ask you, but I have to start with these terrible YouTube, Twitter, good theories. If you search your name on Twitter right now, these lies about you being an actor are still at the top.
That's a lie.
How are you feeling about that?
It's great. It's great advertising, honestly. These people are doing an amazing thing in the sense that they're showing how disgusting they are. The fact that they're calling out me as a witness of this horrifying incident, saying that I'm an actor, a crisis actor, it shows how sad I feel for those people, honestly. Because they've lost faith in America, and we certainly haven't, but that's okay because we're going to outlive them.
Going to outlive them?
Absolutely.
Do you think Google, Facebook, and Twitter should do more, though, to try to tamp down this pollution?
I mean, honestly, these people that have been attacking me on the media, these people that have been attacking me on the social media, they've been great advertisers. Ever since they started attacking me, my Twitter following is now over 250,000 people. People have continued to cover us in the media. They've done a great job of that, and for that, I honestly thank them.
I'm impressed by that reaction. I didn't know how you'd react, given that it's been a week now of these lies on the web.
They're just proving what everyone else is saying, that they're disgusting individuals that have lost faith in America.
What about keeping this movement in the spotlight? You know, it's been 10, 11 days now since the shooting. I know you all are planning the march for March 24th. How are you all thinking about trying to keep your movement in the headlines?
I mean, honestly, those trolls online are doing a great job of it. We're really trying to stay in the headlines by reacting to what the NRA is saying, trying to point out that what Dana's trying to do, I believe she's the CEO of the NRA, she's trying to distract people. If you listen to her talk...
She's a national spokeswoman for the NRA.
Exactly. She's national spokeswoman, and as such, she's a national propagandist for the NRA. If you listen to her speak, she's not really saying anything. She's sounding positive and confident, and that's what she wants the people in the NRA to believe. Her 5 million...
Hold on. For him to sit here and say this stuff, say the NRA is putting out propaganda. The NRA is putting out propaganda now, is what he's sitting here telling you. Democratic talking point after Democratic talking point, calling people trolls because they question what comes out of this little CNN boy toy's mouth. Come on, man. And that's all politically motivated. Their little CNN town hall. That ain't politically motivated. Politically motivated to get your guns. Okay? Who owns? Can you tell me who owns CNN? Well, I can tell you who owns the biggest part of it, and that is Ted Turner, the biggest globalist in history. Ted Turner wants to cut the world's population down to 500 million, okay?
Plus members. She wants them to think that she's on their side, but she's not. She's actually working with the gun manufacturers because...
So you're trying to drive a wedge between the NRA leadership and its members?
Oh, I don't have to. She's doing that herself, honestly, because she's showing that she doesn't care about them. She doesn't care about police. Why do you think she's criticizing these people? It's because she's going after them, and she wants her base to continue attacking them so she can sell more guns.
Some of the criticism of the NRA, and of Dana very personally, are you concerned that you might actually lose support if you get too personal, too incendiary?
Well, she's already done that by attacking Sheriff Scott Israel, who obviously there were some major mistakes made here and ones that we have to look into. And I don't want to say anything until after the investigation's done because I don't know what happened. I'm just a student that had to witness this horrifying incident. But honestly, how can you say that you support law enforcement if you're just constantly attacking them over this? How hypocritical and disgusting are you? These are the people that are trying to protect our lives. Did they make a mistake? Absolutely. Is that something that we have to fix? Absolutely. But there's a much bigger problem in Washington where they say that they want. Here's what Dana's been saying as the spokesperson for the NRA. She says that she wants to continue to pass laws. She wants people in Congress to pass laws that help out with mental health and things like that. And she says that she can't do that. Are you kidding me? You own these politicians. You've passed legislation that enables these bump stocks, which, by the way, aren't allowed at ranges because they're too dangerous. That's how bad they are. But continuing on with my point, she wants Congress to take action and says that they won't. Are you kidding me? She owns because she doesn't care about these children's lives.
And where does the information come from when you talk about this?
My previous research in speech and debate, through learning about universal background checks, having to argue on both sides. I agree that the Second Amendment is important, but I think we should have limitations on it in the same way that we have limitations on the First Amendment. For example, I'm still allowed to speak here today. I'm allowed to speak to the press, but I can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Same way that you shouldn't be able to get an AR-15 if you're a mentally unstable 19-year-old.
Dan, I wanted to have you here as well because you've covered movements for decades, social movements for decades, and I wonder what you make of this current student movement that we've seen emerge in the past week and a half.
I'm in awe and great admiration. This is a children's movement. Granted, it's somewhat, 16 to 19. We're being led by our children. It's reminiscent somewhat of the so-called Children's Crusade in Birmingham, Alabama, in 1963, which was a bit of a tipping point for the civil rights movement, when the students and young people from Birmingham and surrounding...
Sitting there comparing a civil rights movement from 1963, when these black people wanted segregation to end, comparing that to these little liberal bastards pushing gun control. That little uptight David Hogg sitting there scripted. That's why he can't say a sentence without getting messed up. That's why he can't talk straight. Because he's scripted. It's scripted, folks.
Areas came was Children's Crusade. Well, I'm calling this a Children's Crusade. This march could be a tipping point. This is the first time in years that I have sensed within myself we're near a tipping point. We'll see how big the march is. And the big thing is, do you and the other students have staying power? You have the willpower, but do you have the staying power? Because those forces who oppose what you're speaking of, they're depending on you wearing out, getting distracted, moving on to other things. That's their bet.
And I mean, that's kind of what the Florida legislatures were doing. They're trying to make us forget. There's a reason why only one Republican lawmaker at this Florida State House met with us. It's because I think that they want these people to forget. They want to just get reelected through name recognition and the incumbency advantage. And that's what they're trying to do, and we're not going to let that happen.
One point he made earlier, Brian, that I think many people don't quite understand. They hear the words, but they don't quite understand that many in Congress are bought and paid for by the NRA. He stated it directly and forthrightly before. I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. And if there is a tipping point now, it will be from the march to a sustained movement that puts enough pressure on the people in Congress to say, listen, you're either going to cower with the NRA, behind the NRA money, and they're backing in the elections, or you're going to do the right thing.
But doesn't the NRA's power come more from mobilizing its members versus the campaign contributions?
Well, I know the New York Times had a story on this morning. It certainly comes a lot from mobilizing their members. That also takes money. But the key thing, the ballot box that counts in this country, and the key votes in Congress of keeping things holed up in committee, even small steps toward doing something sane, something common sense about guns gets wound up. And that's not because of their organizing ability, it's because of their money.
I wonder, David, I've been interested in your story because you were working for the TV station at school, you were the news director of the station, you've been thinking about getting into journalism. Are you still thinking about trying to major in journalism someday, or are you thinking about more of a political path?
Yes, to both.
Still thinking about it.
So honestly, what I would like to do personally is I'd love to go to like somewhere like Harvard for poli-sci or go to Northwestern for journalism. But honestly, like even the day after the shooting, I got rejected from one of my safety schools, Cal State Long Beach, and
it happens to all of us.
Yeah, it does. It really does. But I mean, honestly, I just want to continue on. I want to continue learning. I might have to take a gap year to work during midterms to help on these campaigns. But I want to continue to change the world, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that, and the only way the American public is going to be able to do that, is through education.
Anything you want to know from Dan Rather?
Got any advice?
Writing is the bedrock of the craft. If you want to do anything in journalism, learn to write, dedicate yourself to a lifetime of improving your writing. I can't guarantee you'll be famous and make a lot of money, but you can have a very satisfying career if you concentrate on writing.
Absolutely.
And that actually would apply to activism as well, right? To giving a political speech, working on honing the writing. Yeah, that's
well,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
That the best politicians are those who write their own speeches. John Kennedy, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan to a degree.
Right.
To a degree.
Right. Well, to the both of you, thank you for both being here. Great to see you. Normally, 10 days after.
And why go to Harvard? Why go anywhere when you're David Hogg? You've had all the training, all the coaching that you need up to this point. Yeah, being a journalist today has zero to do with writing skills. Just take any article from the net that you want to. For example, I mean, anybody who can write a blog can be a journalist, okay? I've spent way too much time on these little interviews. I wanted to go over news other than the shooting, but you know that you don't always go as you want. Car ram security barrier outside White House. And then this article from NBCWashington.com. Secret Service knows the driver. Few headlines. CNN accused of, quote, scripting, unquote, questions from Florida school shooting survivor witness. Local 10 News, local10.com. China to change constitution, allowing President Xi to stay in power indefinitely. 10 News, an ABC affiliate in the Dade area. This is written by Peter Burke, managing editor of Local10.com. A Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School student told Local 10 News that he declined an invitation to attend CNN's town hall on the Parkland school shooting after he was given scripted questions. Quote, CNN had originally asked me to write a speech and questions, and it ended up being all scripted, end quote. Junior Colton Haub, that's H-A-E-B, said Wednesday night. Haub wrote questions about school safety and suggested using veterans as security guards, but claimed CNN wanted him to ask scripted questions instead. So Haub said he declined to participate, saying, quote, I don't think that it's going to get anything accomplished, end quote. Haub said, going on to say, quote, it's not going to ask the true questions that all the parents and teachers and students have, end quote. CNN refuted Haub's claim.
The people made their way to the BB&T.
Colton Haub joins us tonight. Colton, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. And before we get into anything, I just want to make sure that everybody hasn't forgotten why we are actually here tonight. I mean, we lost 17 lives last week, and
yes,
I actually physically put 2 to rest, and to me that was the hardest thing in the world to endure. I mean, nobody should have to go through this, so as long as we're taking the right steps to move forward from this and make sure that this doesn't happen again, I'm all for that.
Well, we certainly haven't forgotten. Thank you for reminding us yet again, and we think that the only way to make the country better and maybe put a dent in this scourge is to have a rational, thoughtful conversation about what to do next. And with that in mind, you were planning to go to this event last night. And tell me if I'm mischaracterizing any of this. And you sent in, at the request of a CNN producer, you sent in a number of questions, statements you wanted to make, questions that you wanted to ask of the politicians on the stage. And they rewrote one of your questions? Is that right?
Yes, sir. So what had happened was 4 days ago, I had gotten contacted by a lady named Carrie Stevenson from CNN. She had asked me originally to just write a speech. It was going to be at the town hall at the BB&T Center. So I agreed. I felt like it would be the right thing to do, be able to go speak my part, as well as open eyes to a few things that I thought that could make this situation a little better. From there, 3 days ago, so the next day after that, we had gotten, I got an email back from her, and she asked for more of questions rather than a speech, which I was totally fine with. So I wrote little less of a speech and more of questions that I wanted to ask at the town hall. The day after that, it was more of just questions. She asked for just questions that I would like to ask. So I gave her my questions, and then yesterday at about 5:15, I made contact with her, and she had asked if I had just asked her one question. So what they had actually done was wrote out a question for me, because in my interview with CNN, I talked about arming the teachers if they were willing to arm themselves in the school to carry on campus. And they had, she had taken that of what I had briefed on and actually wrote that question out for me. So I have that question here if you'd like me to.
That's it, folks. See y'all next time. Peace out. Love y'all.